You know this number not because you worked it out, but because it finds you everywhere, at the checkout line, at the gas pump, and in every conversation you sidestep when someone asks what you do for a living. After taxes, you take home roughly $1,400 a month. Rent is $750 for a room, not an apartment, in somebody else's place, with somebody else's schedule, and somebody else's noise coming through the wall at 2 in the morning. You eat whatever costs the least: rice, instant noodles, whatever is sitting on the lowest shelf. You stopped pretending you pick these things. The number picks them for you. $10 an hour does not give you preferences. It gives you arithmetic. Your car has 190,000 miles on it, and the check engine light has been glowing so long it feels like part of the dashboard. You put in $20 of gas at a time because topping the tank off means something else doesn't get paid. Everything is an exchange: gas or groceries, groceries, or the phone bill, or the one pair of shoes that have been falling apart since March. You're at the register with toothpaste and a loaf of bread, and the card gets declined. Not because there's nothing there, but because the $11 from a transfer you made this morning hasn't posted yet. You step out of line, open the app, and refresh it twice while the cashier and the person behind you both wait. Something inside you shrinks that has nothing to do with the transaction. Your friends from school went in 2 directions. Some got degrees, some landed better jobs. You watch their lives scroll by on your phone while you're parked outside eating a $5 meal between shifts. You don't hold it against them, but you stop measuring yourself against them, because measuring yourself against people at $20,000 is like staring directly at the sun. It doesn't motivate you. It just leaves marks. You search for jobs past midnight, but every listing that pays more requires experience. You can only get by already having the position. The problem isn't that you gave up. The problem is the cycle. Work, pay, get through it, repeat. What keeps you awake at night isn't this week. It's the thought that this week never stops being this week. The first rule at $20,000: you don't run your money. Your money runs you. This is the first salary that feels like something solid under your feet. Not wealth, not ease, just solid ground. Real benefits, direct deposit, a job title in your email signature that makes you feel like you exist somewhere that matters. You move into your own 1-bedroom, not a room in someone else's home, an actual apartment with its own kitchen, a door that locks with your key, and silence on the other side that belongs only to you. That silence is the most valuable thing you have ever had. You can buy food without doing the math in your head first, and you fill the gas tank all the way to full. Watching that needle climb to the top is something people who never lived at $20,000 will genuinely never understand. You buy a new pair of shoes, nothing expensive, just new, and you walk into work the next morning holding yourself a little differently. But $35,000 in a city where a 1-bedroom runs $1,200 a month is still tight. You just don't feel it in your throat every second anymore. It moved to your shoulders, still there, just quieter. The panic of $20,000 is behind you, replaced by a low hum of awareness that one rough month could drag you back toward it. You start seeing things you couldn't see before, people around you making a little more, and that little more showing up in how their weekends look, how their apartments look, how they carry themselves. You're not envious, you're just awake to it. You check your account on Fridays out of routine now, not out of dread. The number is never thrilling, but it is never frightening either. That space between frightening and thrilling is exactly where $35,000 lives, and for the first time in your adult life, you start thinking about what comes next instead of just making it to Friday. The second rule, $35,000, is the first time you stop surviving long enough to look ahead, and looking ahead changes the entire shape of things. You are average now. Not the version of average anybody grows up imagining, but the version that means you ended up where most people do. You did everything in the right order: the degree, the job search, the entry-level position, the patience. And somehow, arriving where most people arrive still feels like less than you expected. You have a one-bedroom in a decent part of town, a car with under 100,000 miles, and a credit card you clear off most months. The fridge stays full, the bills stay current, and you can sit down at a restaurant without checking your balance under the table. That used to feel like the finish line. Now it just feels like a Wednesday. And Wednesday is the problem. You sit down one night and run the numbers forward. $50,000 a year for the next 30 years, the same 2% raises, the same slow climb. The figure at the end is livable. It is not free. You look at that projection and feel something arrive slowly, the way cold comes in through a gap you can't locate. Not a crash, just a seep. Then you find out by accident that a coworker doing the same job in a different department earns $80,000. You didn't go looking for that number. But now it's in your head, and it doesn't leave. The distance between $50,000 and $80,000 is not just $30,000. It's a different apartment, a different car, and a completely different answer when someone asks if you're okay. Same desk, different check. You start wanting more, not out of greed, but because you can see both ends of the road clearly now. $20,000 is behind you, and you are grateful for that distance. $100,000 is ahead of you, and you feel something pulling in that direction. Standing in the middle of that view is the most uncomfortable position on the entire scale. The third rule: $50,000 is the mirror where you see exactly where you landed and exactly where you haven't. Something changes, not in your account, but in the first few minutes of your morning. You wake up, and money is not the opening thought. It's still somewhere in the room, but it stopped being the thing that greets you. For the first time in your adult life, you think about what you actually want before you think about what you can actually afford. You move into a better apartment, not luxury, just room. A second bedroom you turn into a workspace, a kitchen you actually use, a block where you sleep all the way through the night. The difference between choosing something and settling for something changes how you carry yourself through every single day inside it. You book flights without holding your breath for a sale. You put groceries in the cart without watching the total climb. These feel like small things, but to anyone who still remembers $20,000, they are not small at all. You are not rich, but the numbers work now, quietly, without constant negotiation. People around you start calling you successful. You don't push back on it, but the word doesn't quite fit yet. You can see what $100,000 looks like from here, and $75,000 still has the feeling of a waiting room. The gap between you and the people you started out with is visible now, not in arguments or announcements, just in the things you stop bringing up. Mentioning a new apartment to someone still splitting rent on a shared house feels like speaking in a language they never asked to be spoken to in. You don't create the gap. The distance creates itself. The fourth rule: $75,000 is where money finally goes quiet enough that you can hear yourself think. This is the number everybody aims at. You believed crossing it would feel like touching down somewhere, like a door opening into a room you finally belonged in. Instead, it feels like walking through a door into a room that turns out to have more doors you didn't know were there. Taxes take a larger cut than you expected. $100,000 becomes roughly $72,000 once the government is done. In a high-cost city, 6 figures is survival money in a nice-sounding package. You are wealthy to your parents, ordinary to your colleagues, and behind to the person 2 floors above you. The same number reads completely differently depending on which direction someone is looking at it from. You stop saying what you earn, not out of modesty, but because the information creates more problems than it solves. At $100,000, everyone acquires an opinion about your finances. Family reaches out more. Friends arrive with proposals. People online explain at length why you haven't actually made it. Everyone suddenly holds a confident view on a number they've personally never carried. The lifestyle shifted. The apartment is better, the food is better, the clothes are better. But the distance between $75,000 and $100,000 does not feel the way the distance between $20,000 and $35,000 felt. That first jump changed the entire structure of your life. This one changed your selections. Having more options without having more direction leaves you as a more comfortable version of being uncertain. You sit with the number you spent years moving toward and realize something you weren't prepared for. The chase had more life in it than the arrival. The wanting was the engine. The engine is quiet now, and you don't know yet what's supposed to run things next. The fifth rule: 6 figures is a door, not a destination, and the other side of the door is a question, not a reward. The shift is real now, not invisible, just not what you expected. The apartment is noticeably better. The car is newer. Vacations are actual trips to places you've been meaning to go, not long weekends driving somewhere nearby and calling it enough. But the change that lands hardest isn't in any of those things. It's in how you relate to the people around you. You stop connecting to conversations about money pressure, not because you stopped caring, but because you can't find the feeling from the inside anymore. You forgot what it actually costs to be on the edge, and that forgetting puts distance between you and the people still living there, and you don't notice the distance until it shows up on someone's face. A close friend asks to borrow money. The amount is nothing from where you're standing, but the way they ask, the way they hold themselves when they say it, tells you it is their entire situation compressed into one question. You say yes before they finish the sentence. The way they thank you carries more weight than you expected. The gap between you stopped being a number somewhere along the way. It became a different set of lived experiences. Same city, same streets, completely different arithmetic. You start measuring things differently, not in paychecks, but in latitude. Could you leave this job tomorrow without it becoming a crisis? Could you take a full month away? Could you say no to the things that cost you without paying for it afterward? The answer is almost. Not quite yet, but almost. The sixth rule: $150,000 is where money stops being the topic and starts being the silence underneath all the conversations nobody is having anymore. A different world entirely, with a different set of words for everything. You don't discuss tax refunds anymore. You discuss tax positioning, not savings, allocation. Your accountant charges more per year than your first car cost. The people who naturally end up in your orbit earn similar figures, not because anyone planned it that way, but because proximity tends to find its own level. Dinners where nobody looks at the total when it arrives. Weekends where the budget-friendly option simply never enters the conversation, not because anyone is making a statement, but because the variable stopped existing. You stop trying to translate your life across income levels, not because you think less of anyone, but because the translation doesn't hold. When you mention offhand that your tax situation has gotten complicated to someone earning $35,000, something moves in their expression. It isn't resentment. It is distance. The exact same distance you once felt standing at the bottom, looking up at people whose lives you couldn't access. Now someone is standing where you once stood, looking up at you with that same expression. You recognize it from both sides now, which somehow makes it feel lonelier than it did when you only knew one side. The seventh rule: the higher the number, the smaller the circle, and the smaller the circle, the quieter the room gets. Money turns invisible. You stop registering prices. You stop watching balances. The unit everything gets measured in isn't dollars anymore. It's time. What takes your hours? What returns them? What generates without requiring them? The problems on your plate have different names now: estate structure, asset protection, capital positions. vocabulary you never sat down to learn. The money created the need for it. The separation from where you started is real, but it doesn't feel exactly like loneliness. It feels more like displacement. The person you were at $20,000, eating whatever was cheapest, and watching the fuel gauge the way other people watch a heartbeat monitor, would not know this life. And you wouldn't be able to describe it to that version of yourself without becoming, in the telling, exactly the kind of person you used to have a very clear opinion about. The eighth rule: $500,000 doesn't buy happiness. It buys distance from difficulty, from the people still living inside it, and from the version of yourself that knew firsthand what $10 an hour actually meant. $1 million a year. You don't say it out loud. Nobody operating at this level does. The number lives in wire transfers, legal filings, and rooms with attorneys who invoice in 6-minute increments. You are present in conversations where consequential things get decided, not because of a public profile, but because your resources and your judgment are genuinely useful to the people already at the table. That is a functional invitation, not a personal one. The gap from $20,000 is not only financial now, it is structural. It is the way memory works differently on the past. You remember the parking lot, the cheap food, the card that stopped at the register, the way you remember a country you lived in very young. The details are yours, the geography is familiar, but the feeling of being inside it is no longer accessible. The memory is intact. The experience is sealed. The ninth rule: at $1 million, money stops being a measure of your value and starts being a measure of your range. And range remakes everything it touches, including you. Somewhere right now, somebody is earning $10 an hour. They're parked outside somewhere between shifts, with something cheap in one hand and a cracked screen in the other. The tank is running low. The job search tab is open at midnight. They think the problem is the number. It isn't the number. It's what the number does quietly to the space between who you are right now and who you are in the process of becoming. The direct deposit lands every 2 weeks. It takes whoever shows up.